Hey, folks, and welcome to another edition of Dawg Walk Talk, presented to you by DawgsHQ. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos, and with me, as always, the man who's gotten precious little sleep since the end of the season with all of these decisions that are going on. That's Palmer Toms. PT, you getting some rest, buddy?
A lot more than I was right after the national championship game. I'm feeling a lot better rested now. Just over 10 days removed from the game. But like you said, we'll sleep in February has kind of been my motto. Once decision season is over, feels like it's coming to a close, but you never really know with the transfer portal and stuff. But certainly, hit a hit a wall after that national championship game. And, now Georgia fans, Georgia media, all coming down off of that, trying to regroup, recover, and make the most out of, what make sense out of everything that's been happening.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get much sleep then either. As my dad said, we'll sleep when we're dead. So I think, it's been crazy. I think a lot of people, came down with COVID after the national championship. Luckily, I bounced back from that. That was tough to go through, but I guess got to lay around and get a little bit of rest while feeling bad. But there's certainly been no rest for this Georgia team in terms of news, in terms of decisions, some unexpected, some expected. I guess, let's just start off. I think everybody was anticipating that there would be a lot of action after this season. I mean, the reality is Georgia's signing a really big class in 2022. They're going to look for portal additions. And I think, last time you and I did a scholarship count, they were probably sitting somewhere around the number of 90, if you once you factored all things in. So things are going to have to change. I mean, they're going to have to bend some numbers. They're going to have to probably get some guys on gray shirts and, get creative with it. Now, luckily for Georgia, these coaches have proven themselves to be really adept at doing that. But nonetheless, a lot of big decisions have had to happen as a result. I think,
and one thing I do want to note with the scholarship count, since it was pointed out on the board, this week, and if you're not on the board, I'd strongly encourage you to join us. Off season is a great time to join. There's going to be a lot of conversation going on there, a lot of notes, a lot of tips and stuff. But one thing that was worth noting, these super seniors that are coming back, the couple that we'll talk about here, they do count against the 85 this year. In 2021, they were exempt from that number, to allow teams to, give every player that wanted to come back the opportunity to do so without much penalty, other than having to pay for the scholarship. But these super seniors do count against the 85 now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, they got the one free year and essentially, and then it's back to business as usual. By my count here, and I may just be reading this wrong, in terms of people who have confirmed one way or another what they're going to do. So there are still a couple guys out there. Jordan Davis, for example, has not made a formal statement as to what he is planning on. But there are a lot of guys out there who have. And so I think by my count, let's start off with the portal first, because I think that's a pretty interesting area. I think I've got 7 guys that have opted for the portal since the end of the season. Oh, no, excuse me. 8. I was missing Jalen Johnson on there. JT Daniels, obviously the big name and probably the most expected, I would think, of the group. Jermaine Burton, probably the most unexpected, in my opinion, or one of, certainly. Amir Speed, also in the transfer portal. Latavius Brini takes that step as well. Jalen Kimber in the transfer portal and already out. He's going with the Florida Gators. Lavassier Carroll, a freshman who saw kind of limited action this year. Second-year receiver Justin Robinson, who has also found a home at Miss State, and then Jalen Johnson as well. Looking at that transfer list, like I said, Palmer, I think JT, the most expected of the group. Anything that kind of jumped out of that group, though, do you agree with me, I guess, that Burton was maybe the big surprise or maybe somebody else on that list that kind of grabbed your attention a little bit more?
No, Burton is easily the biggest surprise there, considering that he would have been Georgia's leading receiver, not leading pass catcher. Obviously, that title goes to Brock Bowers, but leading receiver returning this year, after hauling in, a good amount of passes there, and playing a big part in this Georgia offense. I think that, you felt like when he was healthy, he was a big part of the game plan, whether it was, drawing pass interferences like he did in the national championship game. Some of his impact doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But yeah, that one certainly is the most interesting to me. Especially given the fact that, when you're looking at this receiver room, you've got George Pickens going pro, and I know we'll talk about that. So you're losing the guy that probably was going to be your number one receiver in 2021 had he been healthy. But with him, banged up, at least up until the Georgia Tech game, and until late in the season, postseason, Jermaine Burton was that number one guy in terms of returning experience. Started 7 games as a freshman, started 8 games as a sophomore. The way I see it is, it's an interesting move. I think we'll get a lot of clarity on the exact reasoning behind it, here before too long when he announces his decision. If he goes to LSU, it makes it pretty clear that he was following Cortez Hankton, that Cortez Hankton was a big reasoning behind his leaving. Also, let's not forget that he was committed to LSU for a while. But if he ends up elsewhere, say Alabama or Texas A&M or anywhere else, it makes things a little bit more difficult to understand, the reasoning behind it. Because I don't know that he would step in at Alabama as the number one receiver. I think that you've got a ton of talent there. In terms of these freshmen that are going to be returning as former 5-stars, stepping into bigger roles with Jamison Williams and John Mechie gone, Slade Bolden gone for Alabama. So I don't know that he would step in there as the number one receiver, maybe the most proven in terms of his collegiate experience. But obviously we've got to wait and see where he ends up going, to kind of, further understand the reasoning behind him leaving.
Yeah, I think that was a very interesting one too. Somebody on the board asked about the idea, and I do think this is really relevant, of how what they essentially called like the Jermaine Johnson effect. The Georgia outside linebacker who transferred to FSU last year was kind of limited, I guess, was playing a lot for Georgia and probably would have played a ton this year, but goes to FSU and essentially is the man and has a chance to boost his stock even higher when it comes to the NFL and the draft and all that. I think that for a lot of these guys, that probably did factor in for some of them. This idea of, Georgia right now seems to be a little bit more collective in its efforts. And I think some guys, and I'm not faulting them for this. I mean, it may sound negative when I say this, but I think some guys want to be the man. Some guys want to be the focal point. And maybe that they weren't going to get that at Georgia. Maybe they understood that. And, Jermaine Burton, I could see being one of those guys. And look, I mean, I like Jermaine. I've covered him for many, many years. He's moved around a lot. He's played at a lot of high schools. He was at Calabasas out in California. He was at IMG. He was at Marietta. He was at Hapeville Charter. So he's a kid who has been around. I mean, he's played at a lot of different schools. And, this decision, like you said, with the move of Cortez Hankton, which we will touch on, I guess, here in a minute as well. I don't know. Like I said, to me, I don't get it. I think that he had a big opportunity in front of him at Georgia next year, but maybe I'm misreading the room, and maybe it was not the case that was going to be the case. For me, I think Jalen Kimber also probably counts as a really huge surprise, primarily for the same reason, and that's that I think Jalen Kimber was going to be in the mix for a starting cornerback spot next year. Now, whether or not he would have won that, I don't know. Obviously, that's TBD for anybody, and I think all competitions are open in that regard. But his was a bit of a surprise move to me. Look, Corey Raymond is a tremendous defensive backs coach down there in Florida. I'm sure recruited him during his time there at LSU. But overall, I don't know. Those are the head scratchers for me. Those two guys, especially. Look, Justin Robinson, I mean, we can kind of call it what it was. didn't look like he was breaking through at any real point throughout his career. And he's going to Miss State, which, look, if you're a pass catcher, that's a great spot to go to. Lavassier Carroll, probably, I think, not inside intel here, but just my gut feeling says maybe not thrilled that he had to move the defensive back, came to Georgia with the expectation of playing running back, probably saw that wasn't going to be the future there. Amir Speed and Latavius Brini, older guys, probably going to get lapped. Brini did by the end of the season. Speed just kind of couldn't get it together over the course of this last season. Other guys were ahead of him, Keely Ringo, Darion Kendrick. So those make sense to me. But like I said, to be Kimber and Burton surprises, not a surprise to see JT Daniels go, but all the same, a very impactful move for Georgia. Let's talk about.
I'll chime in on the JT one there because
that's what I was going to say. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about JT though, but simultaneously, let's do it with Stetson Bennett opting to return. We'll talk about other guys returning, but I think that to me, JT and Stetson, look, they've been hand in hand all season. They've been hand in hand throughout JT's tenure at Georgia. I don't know why they wouldn't be in this instance. JT moves on. Stetson decides to come back.
Yeah, I think that it's a situation where, JT probably saw what was in the making here at Georgia, with Stetson Bennett leading them to a national championship, and really having won over the coaching staff, the team, for better or for worse, for Georgia's sake. He has emerged as the guy for Georgia at the quarterback position. And with a year of eligibility left for Stetson, you had to wonder, all right, is he just going to hang it up? Is he going to call it quits? Is he going to decide to transfer somewhere? Because he doesn't really scream NFL, especially, at this stage with eligibility still remaining. I don't think that Stetson Bennett has a future in the NFL. He's proven plenty of people wrong before, so maybe he'll prove me wrong this time. But I don't think that he had a future in the NFL. So he was going to play college football this coming year, or he was going to hang it up. Well, he decides makes it known that he wants to play college football, and what better place for him to do that than Georgia? Because I think that you would be crazy to walk away from a quarterback that just won you a national championship.
I think he'd be crazy. I think he'd be crazy to walk away from all of the NIL opportunities that are inevitably going to come off on the heels.
Absolutely. And this isn't to say that Stetson Bennett is Georgia's starting quarterback, for the season opener against Oregon. I think that he's your starting quarterback going into the spring, but I think that there's going to be competition. And I think he probably knows that. He's probably been reassured some that he's going to go in as the number one guy. And I think that he believes in himself enough where he can prove it. He believes that he can go out and prove it. Let's put it that way, because he's done it before and he thinks he can do it again. I think that, in terms of JT, how that relates to JT, well, it was going to be another year of competition. If JT decided to come back, it was, there was no guarantee that he was going to be the starter. In fact, it probably was a, guarantee that Stetson was going to be the number one guy going into spring and possibly into the fall. And so for a former 5-star guy, former highly recruited guy, guy that has shown spurts of greatness, maybe not consistently enough, to be, this highly sought after quarterback that programs like Alabama and Oklahoma and, USC and Ole Miss, the programs like that are going to go after to try and, fill their quarterback position. Not that Alabama needs to fill a quarterback position right now. But, these programs that do need to fill a quarterback position, I don't know that JT Daniels is that guy. At least he's not option number one. I think that because of his injury history, you've got some question marks there, whether that's the knee or the injuries the minor injuries that he suffered this season. You've got to wonder, okay, what was it that kept him off the field against Stetson Bennett, as opposed to Stetson Bennett. And so I think that in a situation like this, JT probably, saw how it was going to play out at Georgia, figured, why not try and go elsewhere where he can maybe, have a fresh opportunity there. And it's going to be really interesting to see where he lands. Maybe more so than even Burton, because, you kind of have those three front runners for Burton that have at least emerged reportedly. But I think that with JT, there's a lot of options out there. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of, what level of college football, what tier of powerhouses he falls at. Is he going to be at a program where he's competing against Georgia for a national championship next year? Or is he going to be, trying to make a bowl game or trying to win a bowl game, trying to get, take that jump from a normal bowl to a New Year's Six bowl? It's going to be interesting to see some of these, how that one plays out. Jake, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, to me, the fact of the matter is that the clock's ticking on JT Daniels. He's just got to answer questions. I mean, like you said, the idea is, can the kid stay healthy, and what can he put together on tape? He's had, like you said, some moments over the course of his career where he's looked really good and looked like a former 5-star quarterback. But at the same time, over the last, 2 years, he's also been injured and has, dealt with that kind of for the majority of the year, and possibly even in instances where it felt like, head scratching to a lot of people, where it seemed almost that Kirby Smart would say to some degree, yeah, we think he's probably okay to go, but he wasn't going. And then, later he would come back and say, well, it was a situation where we weren't sure. Maybe he was a little bit uncomfortable. Like I said, the thing about it is, for JT, if you're going to make a move, now's the time to do it. You got to figure it out. You got to get the tape together, and you got to get the NFL prospects rolling, because otherwise the opportunity slipping away, and you're relying solely then at that point on maybe a combine invite or possibly workouts with teams in order to prove yourself. So, this is going to be an interesting move for JT, and I don't know, maybe Georgia will see him again. Who knows? They'll have to face him like they will Jalen Kimber, but
he's also got to graduate. He's also got to graduate because he has transferred before, which adds an extra step that he kind of has to go through to transfer again. I'm not exactly sure how the fact that he got that waiver factors into the free transfer ability, but I do think that, without a doubt, it would make it a lot easier if he graduated, which he is, got to be pretty close to it. Having been in college this is now his 8th semester.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't see any negative side to Stetson Bennett coming back. I know a lot of people do. We've seen people on our board say that. I've seen people on Twitter say that, Facebook, whatever. For me, I just don't see it as a negative. I have a hard time even spinning it that way, to try to play devil's advocate. You've got a kid who led you to a national championship, something nobody's done in 41 years. And look, do we know Stetson Bennett's limitations? Yeah, to some degree, I think we do. I think we have a pretty good handle on those things, but simultaneously, championship experience is championship experience. There's only so many guys who have it, and it's an impactful thing to have, and to be able to win on a big stage and in that moment matters. And I think all anybody really wants is the assurance, and I fall in this camp as well. All anybody wants is the assurance that it's going to be an open quarterback competition come the spring. This is not a situation where Stetson Bennett is guaranteed a job. If there's a better guy out there, he'll play. And I'm of the mind that was the case all along. I think that has been the case. I don't think Kirby Smart is intentionally playing a worse player. So I think that they go into spring and into the fall with very open minds as to who can handle these quarterback reins. If Brock Vandegrift's that guy, he'll get the start. I feel confident in that. Gunnar Stockton, same thing. Carson Beck, perhaps even. It's a situation with all of those guys where if they can outduel Stetson Bennett, then the job's theirs. I believe that firmly.
Yeah. And I think by the time this podcast comes out, I'll have an op-ed piece out on my take on the Bennett situation. I'm with you. I don't see a downside to it. I have a hard time spinning it for the negative, I'd say, a lot of the same things that you said. The championship experience. There aren't many quarterbacks in college football, that will have that. I mean, you could. He's going to be the only one that has won a national championship in college football, and so, I have a really hard time.
There are a lot of guys who've won an Orange Bowl, a New Year's Six Bowl. I mean, that JT Daniels is one of them. He won the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, if you want to talk about quarterbacks returning to college that have won a New Year's Six Bowl, you've got Stetson Bennett, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, JT Daniels, ironically. Anyone else?
Not anybody who jumps off the page to me. I'm sure there are a couple other guys out there. Is Baylor's quarterback coming back? I don't know. But the fact of the matter remains that this is a situation with all of these guys where, that matters. And there's a limited number of guys who do that. It's the same thing with college football winning coaches, right? There's a reason that people get paid to win championships. There's a handful of guys who have won a national championship in college football. Kirby Smart is now among them, but he's the newest member of the club by some stretch of the imagination. There's not a lot of dudes out there who can do that. So I get it. I'm with you. People are going to feel how they're going to feel. Stetson has proven that he is a divisive character, by no fault of his own, in my opinion. It's just people either love him or hate him. And I fall in I like Stetson Bennett category, I guess. Other guys coming back, though, there are a number of them, not a number of them, I guess I should say, but there are some impactful returners. Nolan Smith, to me, probably the biggest that's returning for Georgia, key pass rusher for them, big emotional leader on that defense. Guy who contributed significantly, obviously, this year and last. Robert Beale, the leader in sacks for the team, also back this year.
Let's pause right there. Who would have ever thought that you'd be saying that Robert Beale was the leader in sacks for Georgia this season?
Sure.
And we kind of discussed this off air a little bit, but who would have ever thought that it would be a big deal that Robert Beale is coming back to Georgia headed into this season?
2 years ago, you would have probably thought Robert Beale would have been transferred by now.
He entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, it seemed like it was all kind of trending in that direction.
And so a lot of credit to him. A lot of credit to him, a lot of credit to this coaching staff for being able to, stick to him there and showing a commitment to him. I think that's a really great story. One that I'm sure we will tell, a lot next year, as we get to speak with him and stuff. But yeah, that's one that jumps off the page to me, as well as Nolan, like you said.
And then the secondary, you've got Chris Smith and William Poole, who played significantly down the stretch for Georgia, especially in that Orange Bowl, the SEC Championship, Orange Bowl, and obviously the National Championship. And then Chris Smith, who I think was just a dynamite part of this defense this year, had a breakout year, and I think could have tested the NFL waters and probably had some success with it, but can boost his stock even further by being the man, I guess, in the deep backfield for them. Returning experience is great. I don't know. You're not going to convince me really otherwise. I think it's good to have guys who played significant snaps in the SEC and in big time games back on your roster. That seems, I don't know, pretty cut and dry to me.
Yeah.
From an NFL perspective, Georgia losing quite a bit. John Fitzpatrick announcing he's in. Going to the draft, Channing Tindall also, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, Zamir White, James Cook, George Pickens, Devontae Wyatt, and Justin Schaefer had to. They were out of eligibility. Darion Kendrick making that move, Jake Camarda, and Jamari Sawyer also doing that. To me, not a lot of huge surprises in there. A couple guys you thought maybe would test it another year. Channing was a guy that you thought, okay, possibly he could come back, maybe boost his stock a little bit more. I thought maybe one of Zamir and James, probably Zamir, would come back. Camarda to me, I think, is an interesting one just because specialists are so often not taken in the NFL draft. But I get it. He's a graduate. He's a kid who's gone through it. I mean, he's been here 4 years. I can see why you'd want to move on if that's your ultimate goal. I don't know. Like I said, though, no real surprises in that group for me personally. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, John Fitzpatrick would probably be the biggest surprise to me in that group. But he's got the frame, of a great tight end. I think that he probably saw the writing on the wall that Brock Bowers was going to be the centerpiece of this Georgia tight end room, not only next year, but the next year too. So, I see the reasoning behind him leaving. I'm with you. I felt like, maybe you get one of those guys back from that running back room, or maybe you get one of the guys back from the inside linebacker group. But overall, like you said, not too many surprises. I think that the biggest surprises to me came in who decided to come back. And that's all good surprises for Georgia there.
Yeah.
I think that, Smith and Beale, we obviously addressed that. I think that establishes a core group of guys in that front seven that you can rely on. Those two, along with Jalen Carter, who didn't have a decision to make. Given the fact that they are losing so much at inside linebacker, you knew that was going to be a spot where Georgia was going to be young. You're looking at some guys that are going to be stepping into much bigger roles this year. And so any way that you can help them is a good way. Absolutely. That is the case by having two guys on the edge in Smith and Beale that are going to be able to help them, and a guy on that defensive line that's going to be able to help in Jalen Carter. And then on, like you said, in the secondary, I think that it's big that you've got a safety back, somebody who's been a leader for Georgia the last season and a half, really looking back to Richard LeCounte's injury midway through the 2020 season when Smith had to step in and fill a role. Felt like he played really, really strong football to start the season, and then he got banged up. And so that, you felt like that injury might have set him back some, certainly in that SEC championship game. You felt like he was healthier by the time that the season was coming to a close. Had the interception in the national championship game, but I still feel like there was a lot of really good football ahead of him. And so I think that's a big one to have back. I mean, you could make the case that he made the biggest play of the season for Georgia, with that pick six against Clemson, because I don't know that the 12-0 regular season probably doesn't happen without that. I mean, that game, set the tone for everything. And you probably don't get into the playoffs if you lose a game in the regular season, plus lose the way that they did in the SEC championship. So you could make a case that was the biggest play for Georgia, at least in terms of getting into the playoffs. And so I think that getting him back is big. Being able to pair him with two guys in the secondary, three guys in the secondary that are experienced, four guys in the secondary that are experienced. If you include Keely Ringo, William Poole, Tyke Smith obviously has experience elsewhere. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits into this Georgia defense in year two for him, but really year one of being healthy, and Dan Jackson as well. So I think that you've got a really good, solid core group in that secondary. It's going to be really interesting to see how they fill some of these holes, where some of these pieces may fall. The too deep depth chart. If one guy goes down, who moves where? Those are all going to be things that we'll have plenty of time to discuss between now and September 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the reality is that Georgia's going through something that it's not gone through in 41 years, in that the stock is super high. These guys have played in big time games. They've had great national exposure. I understand the need to want to test these waters. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, beyond this year, I think that there are some of these guys it's not going to work out for. I think that's unfortunately the nature of the business, and that's how it goes sometimes. And maybe that'll give some other guys some pause moving forward. I don't know. But, I understand, take it while the stock's high. I get that. I did want to touch on before we wrap things up here, though, Cortez Hankton's decision. Obviously, Georgia down an outside linebackers coach with Dan Lanning. We touched on that some time ago. That's been expected. He's now officially with the Oregon Ducks as the head coach. But Cortez Hankton with a lateral move, going from wide receivers coach at Georgia to wide receivers coach at Louisiana State University, and
better known as LSU.
Yeah, a new native of New Orleans, a guy who knows that area well and has recruited it great, and should do very well there. But I guess just where do you stand? I guess on Georgia, having to fill that spot. Are you surprised Hankton made this move? How does it kind of shape things moving forward, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I feel like that it's always interesting when you see a lateral move, especially, from a program that's having the success that Georgia is having right now. I'm not sure what the money entails, how much of a lateral move it is there. But I think that, getting closer to home probably played a big factor in that. There's no doubt in my mind that getting closer to home played a big factor in that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, obviously a great opportunity for him to do that. I think Georgia fans wish him nothing but the best. It's going to be really interesting to see how Georgia goes about filling that position. You've already seen with some of these guys out on the recruiting trail. Buster Faulkner is out there on the recruiting trail, kind of filling that slot to give Georgia the, allotted amount of coaches on the recruiting trail. They're putting Faulkner out there. Could be interesting to see, whether Todd Monken moves from the offensive coordinator spot, focusing with quarterbacks, to offensive coordinator working with the wide receivers. That's where most of his NFL experience has been, and his college experience as well. In which case, Faulkner would be a easy person to put into that spot at the quarterback position. You could also see Georgia maybe potentially go after a guy like Hines Ward, somebody who's got experience coaching that position and obvious strong ties to UGA. So that's going to be a storyline to watch. I'm not sure the timing of that. I think that, you probably want to get through this February recruiting period, but part of me says that you would want to have it figured out, for some of these February guys. But I think that with Georgia having the majority of its class in place, it's not as much of a need. You want to make sure that you get the right hire. And so it's not one. Kirby Smart has shown that he's going to take his time with some of these decisions in the past. And I think that could be the case here. And maybe we'll know more about it by spring practice. I would say if we haven't heard anything by spring practice, then it's probably an internal move. And something that Georgia has dealt with internally there. Because I feel like if you're going out and making a hire, you're probably doing that before spring ball so that you can get your guys working with their guy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. We just put up a story with AJ Hoffler over at DawgsHQ, in which he said, they talked to him about it. He's an edge guy for the 2023 class, and basically said, Georgia told me they want to get this taken care of in the next 2 weeks. So it'll be in that window is what it sounds like, around National Signing Day.
But that's the defensive side of the ball, obviously.
Right. Yes. With the offensive side of the ball, I'm with you. They've got pieces internally that can move in. Mike Bobo's a guy he's hanging out in the, I was going to say the unemployment line, but he's probably more like posted up next to the pool sipping Mai Tais right now. That's what I'd be doing if I were Mike Bobo. So, there are intriguing options out there. And that's the good thing for Georgia is the way that they've constructed their roster is similar to the way that they've constructed their coaching staff. It's not an idea of having to rebuild or scramble when one of these things happens. It's the idea of, okay, well, we've got places to turn and we've got guys that can step into these roles and fill them. So,
yeah. And since we talked briefly about the defensive opening there, I guess I'll give, a possible scenario there where Georgia could hire internally is they could very easily move Muschamp, from working with the special teams and having a hand in the secondary, he could very easily move to the outside linebackers coach and be able to get Scott Cochran back on the field working with special teams there, if that's what Georgia wants to do, go internally on defensive side of the ball too. So, like you said, a lot of options, both offensively and defensively. I think it's always intriguing. It's exciting when you've got not a head coaching position open, an assistant coaching position open, because it's an opportunity for that head coach to continue to shape and mold his program the way that he wants it to be.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
It can be an indication of what the future may look like, whether things are going to go a different direction or whether it's going to be some more of the same. So I think that's always an intriguing storyline to watch. Just like recruiting is when you're building your roster, it's certainly that way when you're trying to fill out coaching positions.
Yeah, I'm with you for sure. It's good. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to take care of in the next couple of weeks between signing day, between coaching hires. Spring practice will be here before we know it. And it'll make all of this national championship stuff feel like a distant memory. Not really, it won't. But it will at least, prep everybody for the new and upcoming season. So I know everybody will be looking forward to all of that. We'll have you covered on all of it over at DawgsHQ. So make sure to get over and check us out. We got tons of stuff over on the Dawg Walk, which is our message board for premium subscribers. And we got stories rolling out on the daily. So tons going on. And it may be the off season, but boy, it sure has not felt like it over at DawgsHQ. So come over, check us out, come hang with us. 7-day free trial over there if you want to give us a spin before you dive all the way in. But that being said, I think that's it for me. Unless you got something else, Paul.
Nope, all good.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it up on that one then. For Palmer Toms, I'm Jake Roos. This has been another edition of Dawg Walk Talk, presented to you by DawgsHQ. Thanks for tuning in.